Hey everybody, Mike here. Just wanted to give a quick heads up. We've gotten pretty lucky this season so far with no kind of technical glitches or anything that required a heavy amount of editing or covering up issues, and I think that all kind of came back karmically to bite us in the behind with this one. This particular episode, which is Shane with Kenny Neibart, was a great discussion that just unfortunately was plagued with a ton of technical issues. So our runtime is going to be a little shorter on this one than you're used to. It might feel a little more abrupt as we tried to work around these things. And if you're watching this video version on YouTube, the entire Registry Picks segment is audio only. There was nothing we could do. We tried to make this as legible an episode as we could. Nothing bad behind the scenes with anybody. It was a great conversation, but we just had a ton of tech issues. So I hope you'll bear with us, and I hope you will enjoy this episode. Kenny Neibart joins us to talk about Shane. Every year since 1989, the Library of Congress has selected 25 films to add to the National Film Registry. The criteria? The films must be culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant.
Each week on You're Missing Out, we take a look at one of these films to try and get to the heart of why they were selected and why they still matter.
Our guest today is the co-executive producer of Motorheads, coming out on Amazon soon, and, a credit he might not realize, also now officially a member of the You're Missing Out 5 Timers Club. Kenny Neibart returns to the show, this time to talk about Shane. Kenny, thank you so much for coming back once again.
Thank you. 5 Timers Club. That's exciting. I get my jacket.
You are officially royalty. More like one of those weird, kind of European nations are like, oh, we have a king. Like, does he do anything? No.
Luxembourg.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an honor.
So I was going through this today in my head, what I've been on for, because this is my second Western. Mm-hmm. We did High Noon and we did Top Hat. We did I Was a Fugitive from the Chain Gang.
Mm-hmm.
What was the fifth?
Detour. You were on last year.
Oh, Detour was so great. So great. I remember it so well.
Yeah. Hey, that's growing up, baby.
That's what I was saying to you guys before we got on. I mean, the fact that the one from last year I forgot really illustrates how much my mind has gone in the last year.
Well,
don't worry, it's fine. I don't remember anything. Like, by next week, I'm gonna forget that you did Shane. I'm just like, which one did Kenny did again?
You'll never forget this.
Oh, right. Well, I hope so. But alcohol's a hell of a drug.
It's something it's something that Tom has done, by the way. When we've had people on, I tried to start an introduction for somebody and just go, "Hey, man, you last time you were on for, I don't know, something, but it was great." I just said it to people.
Yeah.
I don't remember shit, bro.
I can't believe you guys have done this for 5 years now. You're in the 5th year of the
it's crazy.
registry. It's great.
Yep. Done over 100 episodes now. We last season ended on episode 100, and we made that Birth of a Nation because we're masochists. And we thought, why not? Let's just.
Well, it's not that we're masochists. It's just that it was the cross we had to bear that was much more flame.
Yeah,
and
it's like podcast like it's 99. We had to do Love Stinks.
equal in terms of the societal damage they've caused. By the way,
yeah.
No, I was going to say, by the way, 1999 film got in the registry this year.
Which one?
Not one that you've heard of. I believe it is called was it Compensation? I think it was. It was like an indie film, like an independent film about. It was like two couples throughout time, one of whom has about like deaf couples. I don't remember exactly but there was. I remember it came up that it was a 99 film. We're like, oh, we'll know what this film is because Phil and Kenny went through every film, and then they're like, this independently produced. I have no idea what the hell this is. No one.
It always breaks my heart when there's some random 1999 film that we didn't do. I feel like we shortchanged our audience member.
I caught that. Well, when you had me on to do my top 10 of 99, I was just like, fuck it. I'm just going to fill it with the most obscure art films that no one remembers.
You did non-films. You
I
did
did.
paint. You
He
did
does.
paintings on celluloid.
He does that.
Yeah,
And it annoys me.
Why do you think we do this show? It's the only framework where I get to talk about those things.
You do.
It's
Oh,
like,
the
I
list
got
you
this.
the
I
list
got
you
to go
gave
to
me.
a museum where only like 5 people can watch it at a time, and it's not really a film. It's just like stuff that happened to happen in front of a camera, and it's like, oh, cool. Can I watch it anywhere? No. Okay, great.
So
It's also 50 seconds long.
how far into this season are you so far?
What are we, like a third of the way through?
Well, we're close to like 75% done, Kyle. Is it like we have a bunch scheduled?
Well,
And once those are
75%
all
like
done,
booked, right?
yeah, booked and we're making a surprising amount of progress. We're going a lot faster than we have in the past.
Because the list you gave me is deranged. Are you aware of
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
so
it gets weirder and weirder as it goes on, when they start like losing a lot of the canonical movies, and it's like, all right, let's start getting weird with it. Like my favorite was like 2 years ago, they put Cab Calloway's home videos in. And I'm just
Yeah,
like,
they do
okay.
stuff like that.
yeah,
I'm just like, okay, cool. I want to watch Cab Calloway's home movies. I mean, hopefully not for this show, because that would be in like 40
30
years, and
years,
I'm
yeah.
not doing this in 40 years. If I had to do this for another 30 years, oh my god.
Well,
I don't think me and him would be friends anymore.
So you can see all these like that. Like, one of the big things was Eau de Artifice was
Yeah.
one that you
Ode to Artifice by Kenneth Anger. Yeah.
Eau de Artifice
Mhm.
was one that you presented to me. That was a woman dressed in an elegant period dress wanders through the water gardens at Villa de Este. No, thank you. But
Agreed.
but you can watch this. How would you find this?
It's that's on YouTube. I'm pretty sure that's just public domain at this point.
The
you can
idea
just
that
watch it
someone
wherever.
so, I mean, some of these it just felt like there was just no chance of even watching them.
So I just let him find links to the ones that are hard to find. I'm just like, Mike, find the links, and when it's all complete, I'll watch them. That's about as far as it goes. If it's something I know I can get a hold of easily, it's like, all right. But Ode to Artifice, yeah, Mike, you do the homework for me.
Here's the reason I send you that list, Kenny, is that quite frankly, and then we'll get into why we're talking about this today, but quite frankly, you in particular, and again, we're big fans of yours, we know how you operate. If we send you a list of movies and there are some obscure titles on there, yes, there's a 50-50 chance, depending on where you are at that day, that you'll look at it and go, I'm not doing Ode to Artifice. Or you'll email back and go, you know what? I have no idea what this is. Let's get weird. I'm going to challenge myself. I'm going to go out. That's what you do. So who knows?
I would go weird. You're right. I would go weird. Thank you. I appreciate that. I love being weird. All right.
Well, I mean, that's what we did with Top Hat. So we did with Top Hat, and that was the iconic episode of you walking in and just being like, "Yeah, I have nothing for this one."
That's wait to hear me on Shane, guys.
Oh boy. Well, this is gonna. I mean, so let's get into this with Shane in particular. Obviously, I sent you the list. You picked out Shane. I am excited.
The one movie I had heard of.
Yeah, I'm excited to do this. In part because, like, I'll talk to you guys about your history, but like my history with this movie has been interesting because when I saw it for the first time, I was probably like 9 or 10 years old, right? And it was like no other Western I had ever seen. And I was like, well, this is my favorite Western, right? Like this is incredible. This is the best thing. And then I got a bit older, I got into like high school and college, and I was watching a lot of other Westerns, right? That's when I started really watching the spaghetti Westerns. That's when I got very into the work of John Ford. McCabe and Mrs. Miller kind of got in there, and I looked back on Shane with this idea of like, it's good, it's hokey, it's hokey, it's creaky, it's whatever, it's good, but like I was a kid, that's why I liked it so much. Now, within the last couple years, it's really risen back up there for me. There's something about it where I think, and we can get into it, in the episode itself, but like, I think one of the things that struck me now is like when you watch it as a child, you're coming at it from the POV of the kid, right? As you're meant to. That's the original novel is from the kid's POV. Then I got older and, I kind of was interested in the more like anti-heroes, things like that. And now I think from the vantage point of being in my, mid 30s, you look at this and go, oh, this is about how you raise a kid. Like, this is about like the immortal debate of like, this kid is asking me about guns. What do I do? Is it better to explain it or is it better to leave it alone? Like, oh, this kid, and so I've kind of had a real arc with this because it's been with me for so long. So I guess the first question I want to ask Kenny and then Tom was like, when was your first time seeing Shane? What was your awareness of Shane? Like, what has your relationship been with this film over the years?
My first time was this morning.
Okay.
And my relationship is, I've always known of it because it was one of my dad's favorite movies, but I never watched it. As is the case with a lot of his favorite films, particularly westerns, which is, I think we know this from the High Noon episode, a bit of a blind spot for me, which is part of why I this actually does feel like me branching out and experimenting. The safest, quietest western there is. But it's a little outside my purview. So that's my relationship with it. I've always known Come Back Shane, and I've always known of the film, but I never watched it until this morning, and I'm not sure when or why I would have watched it otherwise, because it doesn't tend to crack the watch these 10 westerns before you die list anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I would have. I'm thrilled I did. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic.
Tom?
So yeah, for me, being into movies and westerns in particular, it was always just a movie that was talked about. I don't think my dad ever saw it. It was never something he talked about watching. I mean, not that he was like much of a movie going guy, but we had some movies that he would talk about that he saw when he was younger. Always meant to get around to it, especially after Logan, which made like a crucial like thematic point to connect it to Shane. But I just still just it just never I just never got around to it until this. I knowing that this was coming up for the next season of the show. I watched it last September to sort of just get it in my mind, and it's. I don't want to say a roller coaster with this movie because my watching it again this morning, it's not so much a roller coaster as it is like the American stock market going down. Um, I like it, but the things that I don't like about it annoyed me a lot more the second time, where I can appreciate its placement in film history for its pushing the Western towards a more um, introspective place, a more worried about the effects of violence on kids, on just people in general. With George Stevens's experiences in World War II affecting how he makes movies from here on and how he thinks about this sort of stuff. But I see why it doesn't crack the top 10, best westerns lists anymore. It's a movie that if you love westerns, you should see it, because if you don't, there's this very clear path from like the John Ford stuff of the 30s and 40s to from this to the Searchers, and then the Sam Peckinpah stuff, and then the spaghetti western stuff, which in turn leads to the Clint Eastwood stuff and all of that. But yeah, a movie that I was glad to get off my to-do list, and one that I think there's a lot to talk about. Like, even if there's stuff that I don't love about it, it's like, yeah, this is a good movie in spite of the things that I don't love about it.
I think this is going to be an interesting one, if just because I can, Cobbs and Kenny, we'll get into it on the show itself, but I know Tom and I have been texting beforehand about this, and it does kind of feel like the stuff that Tom is alluding to of like the stuff he doesn't like about it is ultimately some of the stuff I really like about it. And I don't mean that to be contrarian, right? Just more like you were saying like it doesn't crack the top 10 westerns anymore, right? And I think to me,
The modern internet's kind of
yeah,
version of the top 10 westerns.
because to me, and this is my take on it, it's the same reason something like the Oxbow incident doesn't really crack the top western lists anymore, which is Shane and Oxbow incident are both great movies in the western genre. Just like McCabe and Mrs. Miller is a great movie in the western genre. And also, if somebody tells you, I really enjoy westerns, can you recommend a western I'll really enjoy? You're not going to name any of those three movies because none of those movies deliver on the things that somebody who is going into a western for the things you like about westerns. Like, because, you know, the westerns that we all enjoy to one degree or another, you know, the violence is entertaining and visceral and the fights are cool. Stevens made a movie where he very purposely was like, I want any gunfire to be just upsetting. I don't want you to enjoy any shooting. And that, as Tom alluded to, comes from, you know, after the war. George Stevens had gone to World War, you know, one of the, as we put it, the five came back, one of these filmmakers who went to war. He filmed the liberation of Dachau. Like, he saw so many soldiers die. And reportedly, he told his son it was tough for him to come back to the States and watch John Wayne movies because he said they use six guns like they're guitars. And he said, I have seen the damage that one single bullet does. And if I'm going to use guns in a movie, I want it to be something that makes you understand the horror that a single bullet can inflict. Now, that is a really cool thing for a Western too, and I really enjoy that in this film. But also, if somebody just got done watching like one of the incredible standoffs in Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, or you know, Once Upon a Time in the West, and was like, "Can you recommend something that's going to give me that same rush?" You're not going to go, "Well, why don't you watch this Meditation on Gun Violence?" You're going to feel sad, you know.
I'm sorry, you cut off in the middle of that.
That's
so
fine. I was just saying,
I didn't know what you finished. Yeah,
that's fine. I just said you're going to feel sad. You can tell me I'm wrong now.
Well, yeah, I do think you're wrong because it ostensibly does deliver what you're looking for in a Western. The two other movies you mentioned, Oxbow and McCabe and Miss Miller, I get that. Those are kind of not really Westerns in Western clothing. This is a Western. You do get a kind of joyous dudes being dudes bar brawl where Shane, you know, your tortured, you know, hero, you know, looks at Van Heflin and they smile as it's like, hey, we're two dudes just getting into a rollicking fist fight. The ending, I get what it's going for, but it's kind of complicated by the fact that there is no other option than to kill these guys. It would be one thing if, like, it was kind of like complicated, a little more complicated or maybe ambiguous, but it's like, no, Van Heflin's going to get ambushed by the guy who speaks gibberish in Blazing Saddles and Jack Palance, who is a hired gunfighter that Shane knows. So yeah, Shane has no other option than to kill these guys. It's not like the Wild Bunch where they could just leave and they decide not to because they're fucking maniacs. It's like, no, he has to do this. I will say the one moment that I do think is actually effective in what he's trying to do is when Jack Palance kills Stonewall. In that, and he pulls the gun on him and he lets him wait for a bit, being outdrawn and letting him know, like, I outdrew you, I'm letting you sit in this, now you're fucking dead. And then he gets launched back into the mud and you're like, okay, that is kind of ostensibly the shit that Peckinpah is going to do with the Western 10, 15 years from the release of Shane, where it's like, no, there is nothing nice about any of this. They tricked this kind of dopey, anger management needing hick into getting into a shootout, and he gets cut down like a child getting the candy stolen from him. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's one of the things that I don't particularly love about what the movie's going for, as much as I respect what it's going for.
Kenny, where? I mean, I'm not. This could just turn into. Where do you stand on this? How do you feel about what Stevens is ostensibly trying to communicate in this film about violence and its nature?
I think what Tom is talking about is really interesting to me. I'm trying to formulate a response to it because I disagree in my bones, but I also can't really come up with something uh, that illustrates exactly why I disagree. Because what I want to say is something to the effect of, even in a situation where you have no choice but to kill a man, you still can be morally conflicted about it. And that's kind of what I feel like is going through Shane's head through the end of it. There's no, which I think is very unusual in film. In general, I feel like there are, frivolous kills and there are righteous kills, and if you kill someone righteously, you go back and go home and go to bed, and you sleep fine at night. I think the idea is that Shane is not going to sleep fine tonight, even though just because he cut, I guess, two men down at the end. And I think that's all it is. I mean, that's the only kind of difference between this and other films. But I I think in a movie where, I mean, we did High Noon, right? And High Noon, um, I don't think he has any moral discrepancy between whether or not he should be killing these people at the end. They're the bad guys, the black hats are the black hats, right? I think Shane has a very simple and it's also the speech that what's the guy's name,
Which one?
the one you say speaks gibberish
Blazing
in
Saddles. Oh shit.
You talking about
Um.
Riker?
Riker.
Riker.
Yeah,
the
Yeah,
Riker.
the
Riker.
speech Riker gives his about the validity of his position about 2/3 of the way through the movie, saying essentially, we worked this land, we died for this land. People coming now, the Homestead Act means they can just take our land or make claims to our land. That's not fair. Whether or not you agree with him, whether or not you think it's fair, one of the most effective monologues in the movie, and giving it to your ostensible villain does kind of give you a window into the idea of, yeah, this is a guy too, this is a person too.
Yeah, I like
Well, I
that
mean,
stuff.
but that's why at the end of the day, this is not this movie. It's a Western in its genre, but it's not about the West, right? I mean, the book isn't even about the West. Jack Schaefer, when he wrote the novel, it's a short novel. I highly recommend it to anybody. It was clearly coming from a place of, because the novel is written specifically like the narrator is the little boy. The novel's narrator is the little boy in Jack Schaefer's novel, and it's him kind of recognizing this. But when Schaefer's writing this novel, it's about, hey, a lot of guys are coming back from Europe, and their kids are probably very confused about why dad, even though he was off fighting the bad guys, right? Dad killed a whole bunch of Nazis or Japanese or Italians or whatever. They're the bad guys. He's the good guy. So he should be like stoked, right? He
Yeah.
should be coming home with pelts. Why does he just kind of stare off in the distance sometimes? Right? He was the good guy. Why is he still upset? The book is really about that, and the film is Stevens kind of channeling his own experience with World War II into that as well. And when you're looking at like that monologue, the Riker monologue, you see, the rebuttal to that by Van Heflin is saying like, sure, you tilled the land, you did that, but the fur trappers and the Indian trappers that came before you did a lot more training of this land too. And what it's, to me anyway, like what this is ultimately about, and why the character of, in this film, Joey, a novel, I think he's Bobby, the character of Joey is so important, is ultimately this is to a degree a movie about accepting that you fought and you went through the shit and you did all of these things for the next generation, right? That the fighting you did and all of that shit and all of the scars that you took,
that is so that that kid doesn't have to deal with it. You're not a part of that. You were a part of the chain that tries to make things better and make things more civilized. Throughout the film, Stevens plants all of these ideas of what the West will become. We even see it with Marion. Marion, when we first meet her, is more of a hardened frontier woman, right? And Stevens very deliberately in her costuming has her kind of embrace more and more of her kind of femininity, to the point where she ultimately puts on her wedding dress again, because the idea is we are trying to take the wild out of the West. And what Shane recognizes is the West can be civilized. The West can get more and more, they're going through the catalogs in the general store of like the gentleman's clothes, but that's not going to happen if there's still gunfighters here, right? Marion says, I wish there were no guns in the valley. And Shane's last line is telling him, go home and tell your mother there's no more guns in the valley. It's a recognition of, I'm part of the old ways. I wanted to be part of this. I'm never going to get to be part of this because of what I saw and because of what I did. But these people can be unburdened with having to deal with this darkness that I had to go through.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't want to dwell too much on the negative here. I mean, I guess we're gonna have to, just to get to, because it's the things that I don't like about it are connected to this thing we're talking about, which is, I don't think Alan Ladd is good in the movie, and I don't think he sells any of that at all. I think he's just completely miscast. And I think the kid is the worst child performance I've ever seen in a movie. I really wish somebody would have shot the kid during the movie. It's just the most grating fucking voice I've ever heard in my life. It's the 1950s Western version of Edward Furlong as John Connor. Just like, please shut up. Please, for the love of God, shut up. Please. Those are the things I don't like about the movie. I like the idea of it. I just, I don't necessarily think the transposition of returning World War II vets translates to gunslinger in the Wild West. I don't think those things really line up necessarily. And it also kind of just ignores that, yeah, a lot of guys came back from the war and were fucked up, but they still lived in modern life and continued. They didn't just leave.
Nobody's saying they left. It's more the idea, again, Stevens is dealing with in this like his own feelings, his own conflict, and he was not out there shooting, but he saw people die. It's the emotional side of it, and that conflict, and the fact that, quite frankly, the other reason that Shane is leaving, right? The other reason Shane leaves, beyond the fact that he doesn't want this kid to see him die, beyond the fact that there are no more guns in the valley, there's the other element too, and I will say that element is even stronger in the novel than it is in the film. I think Stephen Sounds plays it, is that in the novel, the presence of Shane really invigorates something within Marion where the film does acknowledge the attraction she has for him, right? And there acknowledges that tension. The novel goes even more into it further, but there's also the idea of like, beyond being wounded and beyond being a gunman, Shane's also recognizing like, this family isn't going to be totally stable if I'm always around. He's saying this family isn't going to be totally stable if I'm always around. Because clearly there's this tension here. Clearly there's this. We know so many movies that don't even have the gunfighter element, that are just a guy or a girl recognizing, I'm going to destroy this marriage if I stick around. I don't know if I should be here. That's the crux of so many films. With this one in particular, by the way, Tom says he doesn't like Alan Ladd. I actually really like Alan Ladd in this film for the fact that Alan Ladd does not feel like a cowboy. For the fact that Alan Ladd does not feel like the kind of guy you would envision as a gunfighter. for that old adage that everybody tells you, which is the guy in the room who could actually kick everybody's ass never seems like the guy who could do it. You know, it's never the guy who's like, oh, no, trust me, I could fuck everybody up. It's always that guy in the corner who seems a bit chiller. But the interesting thing is, none of the core cast of this movie were George Stevens' first choice.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if either of you guys came across this.
Yeah, no, I read that too.
Okay. So his original choice for Shane was Montgomery Clift.
See, that is so much better.
Oh, sure. He had a note in one of his scripts that was just like, Monty's going to need to bulk up for this scene. But Clift didn't want to do it. The Van Heflin role was supposed to be William Holden.
I mean, I could see that. I did like what Van Heflin did in this movie. So, I'll say even.
And they were circling Katharine Hepburn for Marion.
Might have been a little too overpowering for what is she would kind of alter the balance of the movie. I think she's such a strong force, but I wouldn't have been mad if she was in it.
See, you put those three in, it's a totally different movie, and I think for me it works less. I like the fact that this film is operating with people. Stevens deliberately is like, none of these people should look like how Hollywood cowboys look. Even the costuming, he was very adamant about, like, I don't want, what was his, I have his quote written down here, where he says, I want no Western costume company and no wardrobe department nonsense. Everyone should be dressed exactly how they would have actually dressed in this time.
See, it's funny because I didn't read that Clift was the first choice, but I was thinking about it today. Like, man, I kind of wish it was Montgomery Clift because, one, he's younger than Alan Ladd. Alan Ladd's a middle-aged man when he's making this movie, which kind of doesn't, again, with the returning soldiers thing, kind of work. But also, like, he gets that softness that would make people not think he's a violent guy and would get a housewife to fall in love with him. But also, I think he would have that, in the moments of violence, a conflicted steel in him that you go, oh, I can see that he's a killer, but he's not enjoying this. So it's funny that, me and George Stevens were on the same page for a bit. Smart guy, that George.
Kenny, how do you feel about the core cast of this film, but specifically I think Alan Ladd, because that's probably not a person you've come across in a lot of your film viewing, other than like the occasional noir, maybe.
No, I virtually no experience with Alan Ladd. I thought he was great, actually, Tom. And I liked
it's fine.
I think it was. They don't run into the problem that would have made me uncomfortable, which is that he was if he out alphaed Van Heflin throughout the movie, that would have made me uncomfortable. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even when they had their one-on-one fight, he didn't beat him until he hit him in the head with a gun. Mm-hmm. As a father, the idea of another man coming into my house who is my better in every way, that is like kind of existentially dreadful. I think that might have been the case with Montgomery Clift. Or someone of that ilk. And I think Alan Ladd was able to kind of play that middle ground really, really nicely. So.
The thing I really like about Ladd in particular in this film is, like I said, he doesn't even look like a cowboy, right? He doesn't read like how you would envision somebody in one of these movies to be. And even in the moments where he is conflicted, he doesn't do the thing that a traditional Western actor would do. There's no scene in it where Alan Ladd is like looking disheveled and going like, and brooding, and some of that is the fact that Alan Ladd is not the world's greatest actor, right? By his own admission. He has a quote I have here where he says, he's with regards to George Stevens, he said, I like him. He gives me my time. I may not be the greatest actor in the world, but I'm great with my pauses. And I think that is something that comes through in this, is like, he's not what he's supposed to be. He's not what Joey's imagination of a gunfighter is. He's not any of that. And that also allows you to believe in the beginning part of this film that he can just slip into the life of a ranch hand, right? That he can just do that, because we don't know where he's come from. We get hints of it. I just like, I get chills when I watch this in the beginning, when Joey cocks his toy rifle and Shane just flips around and grabs his gun, right? Because again, to the World War II of it all, it's not the guy who tells you all the time about his time in, at Normandy Beach, and all that. No, it's the guy who seems totally normal, doesn't seem like Europe affected him at all, but then somebody lights off a cherry bomb and he flips the fuck out for a second. That's Shane. And, seeing him slip into the life of a ranch hand, seeing him, I love the moment when Joey comes up to him and says, well, Shane, what would you do if you saw someone cutting through our fence? And without missing a beat, just very casually, I just ask him to walk around and take the front gate. He's trying so hard to just be what he was before this, trying to be, a help around the house, trying to be a part of this family. And then he just recognizes, no matter how much he wants to not be a weapon, somebody's going to make him a weapon. The novel even more so gets into the idea of like how many opportunities Shane gives people to not start a fight before he gets into a fight. It's this idea of like, he's a violent man, but he fully treats violence as an absolute last resort. He's really very much like, I don't want to have to do this. Please do not make me do this. Any opportunity to not do this, I will not pull this trigger.
Again, I don't dislike the idea of it. I don't think he sells it at all. I think he's not good enough to sell. I don't feel conflicted emotions from him at all about it. It's just him saying, well, I tell him to go walk around the gate. And I'm like, okay. And you got anything else there, Alan? Any deeper reserves of emotion other than I read this on a piece of paper? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, listen, it doesn't sink the movie for me. It's just a thing that makes me go, all right, this is like a stepping stone we needed to get the progression of a genre that I love very much. So even kind of the lesser ones, or ones with flaws or things that annoy me, like Shane, I'll be like, all right, I still love it. It's a Western. It's gorgeous. There's moral complications at play here. I love Van Heflin in this. I love the guy who plays Riker. Jack Palance comes in looking like a fucking caricature of himself. That man was always just weird looking, wasn't he? Like,
great looking.
I mean, striking as hell, but just so like, good. Oh wow, like God really just went for something here when he made you, didn't he? Yeah, I like this. It's things like that. The Stonewall murder scene, I think, was really effective. I actually do like the Jean Arthur as Marion a lot, in a role that's kind of, typical for the time. Just like, oh, she's there. She's a woman who's there because a woman needs to be there for, the ladies that go see the movies with their husbands. I don't know. You guys like it more, so you guys talk about good things, and I'll jump onto that.
I'm not like,
I'll let you guys be happy about this movie.
It's like, it's not that. It's just the only reason I'm making faces is every once in a while you describe something in this film and you say it in a way where I'm like, what do you mean? We watched a different film. I like Jean Arthur in particular. Really works for me, and in fact, I will admit I had I had an almost 3D moment. A surround sound moment with this movie, because hand to God, I'm watching it by myself, or sometimes with our cat in our bedroom, and I'm sitting here. I got the box of tissues next to me because I know that the ending is going to hit me like a ton of bricks, as it often does. And I'm sitting there, and we have just wrapped up that part where Shane decides, yeah, I'm going to show Joey how a gun works, right? and he's having the argument with Marion where he's trying to tell her, listen, a gun's a tool. It's only as good or as bad as the person who wields it. Just like, and she says, I wish there were no more guns in the valley, all of that. The scene wraps, and my significant other walks into the room to grab something. So I pause the movie. She looks at the screen, sees me getting emotional, and she just goes, God, if we have kids, are you going to make them watch cowboy movies? And I just had like a 3D moment of it. Like, it was my own personal, are you letting him play with a pistol? I don't want my kid to have guns. Where it was just like, if we have kids, I don't want them to watch these shoot 'em up movies. I was like, again, that's really what this movie is at its core, is it's just about a guy looking at his son and going, I don't know how to raise you anymore. It's George Stevens going like, I don't know what to do with the things I've seen. I don't know if I can be a good dad anymore. He's so haunted, and it's so torturous in that way to me.
Hey,
yeah.
I'm sorry, Kenny. You look like you were going to say something. Sorry.
No, if there's one thing I'm an expert in, it's in not knowing how to raise my children. So
even though you keep having them, which is something,
yeah, because it's so easy to have them. It's so hard to raise them, but it's interesting, Mike. I didn't have the same takeaway. I mean, I'm thinking about it now in terms of the parental aspect of it and not knowing how to raise your kids, but I did not relate to Shane. I related to, what was the other guy's name?
Van Heflin?
Joe.
Yeah, Joe Starrett. Yeah.
Joe Starrett. The guy who was, actually raising the kid. And he didn't have those moral compunctions. It was all existential for him. And that's kind of where I come down on parenting, because I have all these children. It's very hard sometimes to even think about what the right thing or the wrong thing to do is, because you're just trying to do the next thing. So yeah, it's interesting. I feel like you might identify with Shane a little more than I do, with Shane, the character, a little more than I do, because there is this idea of coming from the outside and, kind of imparting wisdom onto children, but Shane also gets to leave at the end.
Yeah, I mean, to die in the mountains, but yeah.
Well,
I mean, lucky man.
If he died, if he didn't die, I don't know if he definitely died. I don't love the idea that he died, really. I like the idea that he chose to leave. He could have survived, right?
That's one of the things that I do love about the movie is we know he got shot because Joey notices that he got hit, and Shane has a look on his face that he doesn't want Joey to know how bad it is. But we don't know how bad it is, right? That's one of the things that I kind of love is that we're almost coming from Joey's perspective, right? Which is, we know Shane got hit, and we don't know. We
don't know. I mean, if he knows he's going into the mountains to die, it does kind of undercut some of the film for me.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not explicit, and therefore I don't have to adhere to that viewpoint.
That's the thing. That's just my read on it, right? Because again, the film leaves us to pointedly, all we see is that he's on the horse, right? We see his silhouette riding off, and he sort of at most like tilts to the side a bit. We know he's been hit. We don't know what that means. Stevens very pointedly wanted this to be a movie about a man who just kind of drifts in and drifts out, right? It's not like Stevens ever said he dies or anything like that, right? To me, the reason Shane, part of it is I'm just like, well, if you've got a stomach wound, you've either got to patch that up or you're, I don't know how well the mountains are going to do for you. But to me, the reason that I, at least in adulthood, have come to recognize or come to feel like he dies is more the idea of, it's almost akin to, I was thinking about V for Vendetta of all things, which is, well, I know it's not silly, but like there's that, because the crux of it is the same, which is toward the end of V for Vendetta when Natalie Portman is saying to him like, well, come on, you started this revolution, like you should, don't blow up, don't whatever. And he goes, no, I'm part of the old world. Like this new world can't work if there's any of the old world still in it, right? And Shane at its core is kind of saying like, well, the West is, can become civilized, but the old way has got to go. The same way like the fur trappers gave way to Riker, and Riker now has to accept like, yeah, man, it's unfortunate that you dealt with what you dealt with, but we can't give you perpetual power because of your sacrifice. Your sacrifice led to the Van Heflin, and Van Heflin's sacrifice is what's going to allow Joey to not have to struggle as much. And so someday Joey's change will lead to, what have you, and so on and so forth, But we can't just keep it this one way. And I think, to me, when Shane rides off, it's that understanding of like, this kid should not have to see whatever's going to happen next. Maybe he patches up his wound, right? Maybe he does. But either way, this child should not have to see any of that. That's at least to me, like why he takes off to one degree or another.
It felt more to me like what we were saying earlier, the idea of my presence here destabilizes this family and maybe destabilizes this civilization. And I need to kind of move on. But to me, it almost needs to be that choice, as opposed to I'm dying and I don't want him to see it, which is not really much of a choice to make.
Yeah, I would have to agree with Kenny there. I kind of felt like, I mean, he like from the jump, he's decided to leave. That he's like basically saying, if I survive Riker, I'm never going to see you guys again anyway. So, either I'm dead or I leave. So the kid being there maybe has something to do with it, but I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's just kind of like it's a less cynical version of the Searchers ending, which is just, all right, I did my thing, and I have to, like, I'm now burdened with being a relic in a world that is quickly leaving me. I mean, obviously, like I said, less cynical. Shane is not the vicious madman that John Wayne is in that movie, filled with hatred. Shane's obviously a guy who clearly almost like a character in like a TV show, just bounces from town to town and trouble just finds him, and he doesn't want to be in trouble, but it's like, well, I'm good at this stuff, so I guess I have to help these innocent people, even though it's torturing me. I think it kind of needs to, whether he lives or dies is one thing, but I do think what Kenny is saying is that it does need to kind of, he was going to leave no matter what, is basically, what Kenny's saying is, I don't know. I'm rambling.
I mean, the other thing I'll say is to me, like, there's so much in this film. Like, one of the elements that I love, and I don't need to dip too much into my personal life or anything like that. People can read between lines, but I'm just going to shoot straight. Shane going into the tavern and ordering a soda, and everybody kind of giving him shit. Fucking hits, there's something to that too, of like, it's not like
both, brother.
Yeah, it's not like the movie ever explicitly says like, cause Shane had a booze problem or something like that. It doesn't need to. You just, in that moment, that happens. And again, there's so much of that. We don't know Shane's past. We don't know anything, to that degree. And that moment just, it really hits me. And he gets into this conflict over it and then goes back and orders a soda again. I don't know. Like, even those little moments, Shane, to me, this movie, and I don't mean to say this in a way that's going to sound like one of these, weird fringy podcasts, but like, to me, Shane is like one of the ultimate movies about like how to be a man, or what it means to be a man, and what like honor and dignity means, and like coping with this stuff, and trying to live and trying to start anew. It just, these little moments that hit me, and like a lot of those are not in the novel, So a lot of these are George Stevens basically finding a Western in which to explore contemporary masculinity and fatherhood and all of that. And it's just amazing to see so much of that littered through this movie and exploring it in ways that are different than a lot of other Westerns do, which is not to be dismissive of the other Westerns, right? I think it's just more the thing of like, if you watched if you've watched John Wayne and you've watched Gary Cooper and you're like, I don't know if that's a cowboy I would be. Shane is a movie that's like, this could be the cowboy you might be. You know what I mean? It's like it's offering a different side of this. And I think it coming from Stevens's perspective, it coming from a man who before the war made a lot of like light, fun comedies and light, happy movies, and then comes back from war and it's like, I can never do that again. I'm going to make A Place in the Sun. That's going to be my new perspective on humanity. And, that, and ultimately, like, he makes Place in the Sun. He makes, he's got a couple that he makes, in and around this, but like leading up to Giant and The Diary of Anne Frank. Like, this is a guy who's working through some stuff, and I think Shane's a crucial part of that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, irregardless of how much I like it in comparison to you guys, it's absolutely an important stepping stone, not just in Westerns, but in, movies in one of the pivotal filmmakers of all time's career trajectory. When me and Mike were texting about this, I said that, World War II changed all of those guys, those five guys, so completely that it essentially World War II was an important first step in Hollywood making a shift into the auteur system of filmmaking, because these guys start, not to say that they didn't have distinctive styles at the time, but they came back and had such specific changes in their filmmaking afterwards, which was so clearly defined by their time in World War II, that everything after it pretty much changes. As influential as these guys' work was beforehand, I think so many of the filmmakers that would come in the film brat era, or even just like kind of the worker guys who would make some of the Westerns or action movies or whatever, what have you, coming, they'll tell you that it's the movies that came after World War II that is the best movies, or the movies they saw from this guy that made them want to be a filmmaker, or this. People will tell you with Stevens, oh, it was Shane or Giant or A Place in the Sun. With Capra, people would probably tell you, oh, it's A Wonderful Life. John Huston, Treasure of the Sierra Madre. World War II, this is absolutely an important milestone, stepping stone in the evolving language of cinema, irregardless of whatever, personal dumbass nonsense that I'm spewing about this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, and we could go on and on about this, but at the end of the day, this is, one of the things that makes Shane stand out. We always talk about the idea of like, if you watch the film and you didn't get why it matters. To me, I think the ultimate thing that we've circled here is you don't think of it as a Western, in a way, right? Like, enjoy the trappings of a Western, but like, we're talking about this post-war reaction. Remember, this is a time where John Huston couldn't release a documentary on PTSD. And then, he couldn't release a documentary on PTSD, but this is a way to explore PTSD. And maybe people felt at the time, maybe it slipped past, but it certainly had a positive reception in its time. So not to undercut this too much, but just we are on, we want to make sure we're respectful of everyone's time. So winding down as we always do, Tom, how do you think Shane did at the Academy Awards that year?
Probably got a few nominations. I'll say picture, director, cinematography, screenplay. I don't think it won anything. I don't remember.
So it does win something, but you might be surprised some of these noms. It was nominated for Best Picture alongside Julius Caesar, The Robe, Roman Holiday, and the winner From Here to Eternity. It was also nominated for Best Director, which it lost to From Here to Eternity. Best Supporting Actor for Richard Burton, which it lost to Frank Sinatra for From Here to Eternity. Did I just say Richard Burton? That is not the name of the boy. I just said his name was Richard Burton. My mistake. Best Supporting Actor
Joey Jr.
for yes, you know who I mean.
Joey was nominated.
Yep, Brandon DeWilde.
Wow.
Brandon DeWilde. And was nominated for Best Supporting Actor for Jack Palance, who again lost to Frank Sinatra from Here to Eternity. Was nominated for Best Screenplay, which lost from Here to Eternity, but it did win Best Cinematography Color.
Can't be mad about that.
Obviously, as I alluded up top, we want to make sure, Kenny, we're respective of your time. And by that, I mean, we want it to be thematic, which is we wish you could stick around longer, but instead you're going to ride off and we're going to keep yelling, come back, Kenny. Kenny, come back. Kenny, come back.
And die.
Kenny, no.
I will come back. I'll always come back. I love your show, and I love you guys.
Well, Kenny, thank you so much for joining us. And I'll be honest, thank you for being on my side with Shane. That helps me a lot, quite frankly.
Yeah, man. Once in a while. Someone's got to back you.
Every once in a while. Yeah. On your way out, Kenny, do you have anything you want to plug? Do you have anything you want to tell folks where to check you out?
Just
where to
watch Motorheads on Amazon. I think it drops on May 20th or May 22nd. It's good. I'm
terrific. Well, we look forward to it. Kenny, thank you so much. We look forward to having you back, on future installments, possibly for a weird film. Who knows? Maybe you'll go weird next time.
I'll definitely go with something really weird now that you pointed out that I'm a potential weird guy. I like that.
Hell yeah, brother.
But everybody else, stick around. We'll be right back with our picks for the National Film Registry.
The National Film Registry isn't some fixed object, frozen in time. It's always growing, adding new titles every year. These annual selections are made by the National Film Preservation Board, with members like Martin Scorsese, Alfre Woodard, and Leonard Maltin, and representatives from organizations like the Academy, the DGA, and the AFI coming together to debate and decide. But they don't just pull titles out of thin air. They pull from the public, people like you and us, who can submit their nominations for the registry in a form on the Library of Congress's website. What we do, at the end of each episode, is have Mike and Tom pick films not yet in the registry that they feel should be, inspired by that day's topic. At the end of each season, those films will be formally submitted to the National Film Registry for consideration, on behalf of You're Missing Out. Here are today's picks.
Okay, so with this one, a lot of different ways to go, and I wanted to sort of touch on this movie's long reach and how it's influenced a lot of things. Its place in history that led to the creation of other things that led to blah blah blah, the dominoes falling, and how you could find it in not off the beaten path with this pick, but not one you would necessarily think Shane, just because of how maximalist this movie is. It's a movie that deals with a wandering stranger strolling into a story of a villain that's sort of dictatorial, authoritarian in their way, and this stranger's PTSD and issues with violence, but his talents at violence, and how, by the end of it, he helps out, uses his violence, but, walks off into the distance and leaves the people he saved with his talents to live a better life that without him. It's the kind of a typical story, honestly. One of the ways that this movie's domino effect really sprawled out throughout history. We mentioned it in the episode. Logan is one of those kinds of movies. Obviously, it fucking mentions and shows clips of Shane, but we can't pick Logan at this point. Logan's still 9 years old. So I'm going with a movie that is 10 years old, and that is Mad Max Fury Road. First year of eligibility. Who knows if it makes it in its first year. It's one of those ones that you could probably see it making it, but I think if you paired it with Shane, you could see a very interesting double feature of the domino effects at play. A movie from the 50s, and then flash forward 72 years later, and how that movie's still affecting things in such wildly different yet so similar ways. Mad Max Fury Road's just one of those movies that, when our kids are 30 years old and doing podcasts as the ice caps are melting, they're gonna be like, yeah, I mean, like Mad Max Fury Road, what can we say about it that hasn't been said already? It's gonna be Star Wars, it's gonna be The Godfather, just one of those movies that you go like, yeah, like it's like, come on. But Mad Max Fury Road, there's a direct connection. George Miller is a classicist. It's one of the great movies of all time. One of the movies of the last 10, 20 years that actually moved the medium forward in very profound ways, filmmaking wise, while telling a classic story with unique details to make it feel fresh and feel new. So Mad Max Fury Road is my pick to pair with Shane for the National Film Registry.
Before we started doing this, I asked Tom, does he have a weird one, a swerve? And he's like, no, I don't. And listen, I understand, and I'm just going to take you to task for this, Tom. I understand that this movie technically came out in 2015, but obviously it's part of a franchise from the 80s. And I can't believe that you are going to use your registry pick for the esteemed Western Shane and find a way to connect it to some 80s sci-fi bullshit. I can't imagine somebody doing that. Wink, wink. So my pick for Shane, I talked about how Shane is about, it's not a Western in a sense. It's about what it means to be a man, how to be a good man, how to overcome being haunted by your past. Can you go back to the man you were after something horrific and traumatic happens to you? It's a movie about fatherhood. It's a movie about identity. It's a movie about being haunted by your past and trying at its core to figure out what it means to be a good man. Now, George Stevens is exploring that through the prism of the taming of the West, the Wild West, and similarly, you can explore that idea of what it means to be a good man and can something still come through in, let's say, the futuristic crime-ridden city of Detroit. Shane, I'll say this, Shane means a lot to me. I'm going to give some insight into my personal life. Shane means a lot to me because it is a movie that a lot of people can just watch as a cowboy movie. But to me, it's about what it means to be a man, and it always moves me. I grew up in a house that was not a cowboy house. My father doesn't have that connection to Westerns, certainly doesn't have that connection to Shane anytime I add it on. But the movie that does that for him, the movie that moves him that way and is about what it means to be a man at the end of the day, is Paul Verhoeven's 1987 film RoboCop. There is a very clear through line from RoboCop, from Shane to RoboCop, in a number of ways, and not just the fact that it's about what it means to be a human and what it means to try and reconnect to your past. Can you still be who is Murphy, right? Can he still be Murphy? But it's also the fact that yes, the violence in RoboCop can be over the top, right? But Paul Verhoeven very much does not want you to enjoy violence, right? And even though the robot suit looks cool, it's not like RoboCop is some quip-slinging badass, right? Anybody else, if you said Robot Cop, they're not going to make that movie because RoboCop is so stiff and Murphy is so tortured. It's a deeply moving movie, and it's another situation of, to talk about what Jean Arthur represents and what Marion represents in Shane, and how even though it's not like this character has long monologues, they're doing a lot more with that character, and that character means a lot more than necessarily you might think on the surface. That's Nancy Allen in RoboCop. Again, a powerful character. And to take it even further with the parallels, we talked a little bit about just how creepy and off-putting Jack Palance is in Shane. That's Kurtwood Smith in RoboCop. Kurtwood Smith in RoboCop is 1-to-1 Jack Palance in Shane. Like, it's just 1-to-1. There is so much there. And I've never personally cried at RoboCop. But similarly, like, the arc that I've had with RoboCop is like, I watched it as a teenager and I was like, cool, this robot cop is shooting people. And as I've gotten older, I do find myself more and more moved by Murphy's journey in RoboCop. Like, that movie does mean more to me now. It is a fundamental film of the 1980s. It is a classic example of a blockbuster, like Shane, a blockbuster that is packing in a lot more meaning than I think you would expect on its surface. And it just seemed like the obvious choice for me. So RoboCop is my nomination to the National Film Registry.
Next week,
we're doing a feature-length commentary track for the surrealist silent western, The Wind.
You're Missing Out is a production of Neon Night Media. It's hosted by Mike Natali and Tom Lorenzo. The show is produced by Kyle Lampar and edited by Mike Natali and Kyle Lampar. More information about our hosts and guests are in the show notes. Thank you to Amanda Rush for our social media, and all of you for checking us out.
If you're listening right now or want to take the show on the go, every episode is available as an audio podcast. Follow You're Missing Out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you hear, please leave a review and a rating. It helps folks find the show.
Want to watch the show or watch some of the films along with us? Great, that's why we're doing this. Don't leave us alone out here. Check out our YouTube channel. We've got video versions of every episode, uploads of some of the National Film Registry titles we're discussing, commentary tracks, and live streams. And once a month, I'll be uploading some content that's exclusive to the YouTube channel. So be sure to click subscribe and hit that little bell to be notified as soon as new stuff goes up. Because, let's be fucking real, I ain't sticking to a goddamn schedule.
So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
And we'll see you next time.
And you'll see us next time. Because we don't watch you, you're watching us.